So you've watched so many Western founders come to Shenzhen to build their dream products. So what is the most common mistake that you've seen them?
We try and convince people not to build hardware.
From the surface, Shenzhen's competitive advantage is cost. But beyond cost, what is the true advantage of Shenzhen's capability? Eric Pan started Seed Studio in 2008 selling hardware from his apartments. Today, the company behind Reachy Mini's production, NVIDIA's robotics partner, and the AI hardware partner banner all over Shenzhen is telling the next generation of Western founders to stop making hardware. We're in Shenzhen to find out why.
For a startup to build a trust over hundreds of different suppliers is a nightmare.
Hi, Eric. So from the inside, how would you actually describe the business today in 2026?
So we started with open source hardware, and we still do so, but it's evolving all the way from modules to devices now more into solution systems. And we see ourselves as a platform to incubate more hardware ideas into real products.
And you've described the business as 2/3 of prototyping for early stage startups and a third for scale-up production.
Yep.
So can you tell me more how that scale-up production part actually work and how would a founder work with a team like yourself?
Sure. I think it's actually a loop. We provide the open source modules and devices as the reference design, modules as the core components. So people will buy them and they do the prototypings. Try them out to infuse your ideas, software, data into the creation. Then the best option is come back to us and to scale that because we have all the supply chains, we have all the expertise. We just need to change the design files, remove some components for them, or remix several projects together to make into their creations. So it's very naturally growing from the 2/3 of prototyping into 1/3 of scaling up.
So the Reachy Mini story, where the Poland's demand spiked 5 times more than they expected. So how did you help the team and how did you work with the founder to
We
that
know
demand?
Poland for many years, and they have been using our real speaker, which is microphone array from the very beginning.
Okay.
So it's very organically, they evolve into a device that they want to manufacture, they ask us for help. And we respect this project very much, so why not? And we hosted them as of our team. So they come to Shenzhen, stay here for 3 months. And,
in this office or?
In this office.
Nice.
And we put our engineers to work them together, side by side. Basically, we help them to re-engineer many part of the design because we know the manufacturing better. And it's more like an engineering process. They do the EVT. We help them to fine-tune the designs. We talk to the supply chain, know the restrictions. And we had a lot of injection moldings or stampings for different kind of the parts. Because they have a very clear goal, how many they are going to ship, how fast they should be doing that. And we put our project management team and engineers in full speed to support this happen. And it was kind of magic because they are the right team to work with. They know us, they trust us. So even it's 2 companies, we work as one team.
In terms of the supply chain partners, are they all over Shenzhen or do you have a set list of people that you go to for various components?
Of course, we have SRM, a supply chain relation management, and we have the majority of them are around Shenzhen and Dongguan, but we still buy parts from east of China, from all over the world.
What would have happened to Poland if they didn't work with you guys? How would they meet that demand?
I don't know. There can be many folds. There can be if they go to all the supply chain themselves, because to any of the supplier, they need a long time to trust the customers as well.
Yeah.
Not only vice versa, but they need to understand this is a startup. But they are not nobody. They can pay on time. They know the manufacturer and respect the process. So it's taking a long time to build the trust. But if for a startup to build a trust over hundreds of different suppliers, it's a nightmare. It's not only about the budget. It's also about the understanding of each other, understanding of what's limitations on manufacturing, why we cannot do this way. It's also on the quality management. How do I set up the quality to make sure the factories knows what to deliver? Also, it's about the lead time. Lead time is actually, most of the lead time is about waiting because the manufacturer cannot be empty until you come.
Yeah.
They always have some queues, but why would they prioritize your projects? So it's a lot of orchestrations in between, and we are doing this job for 18 years. We have our own product, we have our own supply chains, we have our own factories, so that's make this life much easier.
Yeah, and you have this close relationship with various factories that you've worked with over the many years, and so it kind of builds that trust over time. And when the startups go to you guys and then to the factories, then there's one layer of support.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We are more like a filter or middle ground of the trust because we need to understand the customers as well. We have selection of our customers very much. We don't do consumer electronics because we think that's going to be very fierce competitions.
Yeah.
Has to be very large scale that the corporations might be taking over. So we're focusing on emerging technology. We're focusing on more vertical or industrial oriented stuff.
For sure. So you've watched so many Western founders come to Shenzhen to build their dream products. So what is the most common mistake that you've seen them make?
Well, the mistakes are very uncommon. Each team have their like restrictions. Some of the like Apple experts, they're working for Apple or Microsoft for hardware. They come to Shenzhen, and they are demanding very much like a corporation, but they have very small volume, and they have a very small supplier. Versus previously they are working for Apple, so their methodology will fail. They have to change the methodology to more agile, more trustworthy, relationship-based, not like contract-based with a lot of demanding way. So this is one of the common mistakes for the hardware background people.
Yeah.
But for the software background people, they don't know manufacturing at all. So they will think, okay, if it should be like a coding, I compile in 5 minutes and I can change it. But for hardware, any changes might take weeks. So you have to have a lot of simulations, understandings of the process. We call it DFM. But for small teams, it's not designed from manufacturer. It's designed from manufacturer. If you're Apple, the factories should be, you care for them. You change according to the needs. But if you are a startup, the best way is not to design from scratch. It's design from what's already out there.
Interesting.
For example, if you want to design a tablet, you go to a tablet factory, see what they have been working around, and to change from that, give it a model so it can move around, or give it different extensions. But don't build from scratch.
Yeah.
So that's, I think it should be a key lesson for the software team is look what's already out there and design from that.
So it seems like a lot of people tend to come to Shenzhen with a certain expectation of, okay, this is the prototype that is from the 3D modeling, and then like make it happen. And so it seems like it doesn't really work like that way, where it's better to see on the ground what's available and then do the design.
I think it's not a common mistake, but it's a common takeaway is people should come to Shenzhen with openness. They should let go of their ego. They should respect more of what's already out here. The engineers are very expertise. Even the workers, they have the experts.
Yeah.
So respect for their way they are doing things.
Yeah.
By default, they're not doing wrong. By default, the creators might be wrong. Yeah, I think that's the best way to avoid the mistake is come to Shenzhen more often to see already what's happening. And another way to overpass the mistakes are don't do hardware. From 10 years ago, we're trying to help people to build their hardware. But 10 years later, we're trying to convince people not to build hardware.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, because you are a software team. You don't need to build the hardware from scratch. You should look at because why we do open source hardware is for people to take them as a reference design. So you have the reference design, you have the 3D printed enclosure. That's good enough. You don't need to compete with the world on the hardware. The software team usually have their expertise on the functions, on the user experiences, on the vertical knowledges. That's their best competence.
Yeah.
So they should focus on that and using a more standardized hardware. Don't put too much effort on to make this hardware good enough as Apple. It's not going to happen. So they should really understand who they are and come to Shenzhen to find the right small enough complementaries to their business.
Yeah. And why do you think that there are so many hardware founders that are from software background that is trying to innovate on the hardware side? Because the open source hardware is not a secret, right? Like everyone knows that they exist, and why don't more people use that in your opinion? You're saying that you're trying to make people make hardware less and focus on the software. So what do you think is stopping these people from focusing on the software and still go to the hardware side and try to innovate there?
I think it's because most of the venture capitalists, because VC wants to invest in hardware. And for more than 10 years, people think, oh, hardware might be the new software, and they collapse.
Yeah.
And now I think for this trend, we see a lot of drive is because of AI is eating software.
Yeah.
People panic and want to find a standing ground where hardware might be that. But I think it's not about the software and hardware. It's more about public domain technology or like vertical domain technology.
That's
so people
really
should have the later one.
Yeah.
If you're on the public domain technology, you should be working for Apple or like Meta or Anthropic.
Can you share more about what you mean by public domain knowledge?
Public domain knowledge is you want to make a device that everyone knows how to make and everyone wants to use that.
I see.
It's like iPhone, the next iPhone. I think most of the team who wants to build the next iPhone will fail. Most of them.
Yeah.
Most of the companies, even most hardware companies will fail on that. But for the verticals, for the more standard long-tail market, there are so many interesting things need to be renovated.
Can you tell me a specific story, you don't have to share the name, of a Western founder that came to Shenzhen and failed? what did they think they understood and what did they actually miss?
Yeah, too many of them. Yeah, but a common story is like a Western founder. They have software knowledge. They have a lot of budget. They come to Shenzhen, they find a design house, and they want to build this into scale very fast. But they don't know what will be the limitations. And so they go to the factory, point at all variety of things because they pay have good money. Everybody listen to them, but they are not giving the right guidances. In the end, the manufacturing will be slowed down, will be too costly. They don't know how to set up the expectations about the quality. So the team will be deliver something like without clear understanding of the requirements. They don't know how to command the requirements, and they don't listen.
Yeah.
So this is a very high failure rates. People will have very ideal expectation because they are in Shenzhen, so they punch the factory too hard, and they push to the limitations, sometimes beyond the limitations.
Yeah.
So the hardware cannot be made. In the end, they don't ship. They have a lot of investment or back orders, but they cannot ship, and they failed, and they broke their reputations.
Yeah.
This happens a lot, but this happens often in the consumer electronics, because for consumer electronics, everybody is trusting the wave, and everybody is fighting for the wave. They have to be fast.
Yeah.
They have to be differentiating. But I think most of them are failing, so we don't want to have them.
Yeah. You mentioned a point earlier about building trust. You know, let's say I'm someone that's coming to Shenzhen to build my dream product. How would you advise me to build trust with the partners that I'm working with, like locally, like the factories and basically the whole part of the supply chain?
I think the best way is first to come as a student, as if you are a student. You are like a rock climber, but you are the first time to the mountain. You have to trust your coach, you trust your guides. Go to the factories to see what's happening, to gain as much knowledge as possible. And go to Huaqiang Bay to see what's already been built, understand the methodologies, understand the material, the process they use, and come back and to rethink do I really want to build this? Can I just tolerate what's already out there? It's not perfect, but should I just change a little bit to be different?
Yeah.
Don't build it from scratch, but rebuild. You are like shopping in the whole Shenzhen area.
Yeah.
To find the right ground to start with.
So be a student and go on the ground and pick from what's available and try not to change everything from the start.
Exactly.
So there's been a lot of talks in the West about reshoring, so bringing back manufacturing facilities and capabilities back to the West. And from the surface, we all know that Shenzhen's competitive advantage is, you know, one of them is cost, right? Everything is a fraction or a hundredth of what it will cost in the West. But beyond cost, what is the true advantage of Shenzhen's capability?
We usually see it as the three parts: quality, cost, and lead time. So, and this impossible triangle, if you need the cost, usually you need to have a very long lead time to prepare for that. Shenzhen, I think, everybody talking about cost, but under the cost is all the engineering complexities. It's a full, like a tree of supplies that it needs to be responsive. So Shenzhen is like a jungle with enough biodiversities. You can find an engineer with all kinds of backgrounds, all kinds of skill sets. So if you want hardware, you can find the right species to remingle to whatever you want. I think that's first reflecting to speed. Secondly, cost really matters to quality and volume. If you have small volume, you can expect the cost to be low anywhere. But in Shenzhen, you can get a relatively much lower cost on the small volume and bigger volume because there's enough competitions. There's enough demand and supplies. I think really matters about reshoring is can we replicate the demand and supply in United States, Europe, or anywhere. In Shenzhen, we are facing the global demand and we are trying to supply according to that needs. So I think in short term, you cannot just remove the whole jungle and to redeploy that on the Mars. That's not going to happen. Of course, the reshoring can happen on some stages for semi-assembled products. You redo that to recombine them into the finished product. That can happen in Vietnam, in the States, in Japan. We're trying to do that as well.
So the global demand coming to Shenzhen is enabling that speed, that lead time, the cost advantage. So the question is how to replicate that elsewhere, anywhere where the cost is so high to make a certain components, especially the bespoke ones. So tell me about Rebots. You mentioned that you're trying to have more people make less hardware and focus on the software side. And tell me how you decide to build Rebots and the story behind.
Yeah, for Rebots, it's kind of, how to say, unexpected. We didn't plan to do robots in the very beginning. We focus on the open source hardware, is on the AI part. But gradually, we made the edge computing like JSON. So people come back to us looking for more parts around the computations. But we like robots so much. Our team say, okay, how about we make a robot arm? I say, no, we don't. We're not good at robot arms. But in the end, it's like internal alpha projects. It's like for hobbyists, for internal explorations. After a few months, we share that on GitHub. Say, okay, would you guys like to build an open source robot arm with us? And we see a lot of interest.
Nice.
And this is a new market to us. We look into that, okay, there are so many robot arms, but most of them are closed sourced. The professionals are all closed sourced and they're super expensive because they were from the old industry way. They were not built for the AI part. They have beautiful automations.
Is it like the open arm or,
It's before that. It's like KUKA, it's like
Oh,
ABB.
right, yeah.
They were like the traditional
Yeah,
ones.
those are like huge scale.
Huge
like,
scales.
Yeah.
Then we have the like education arms, like do board, like an elephant. They have different kind of servo-based
Right.
arm. And then we said, okay, with all the robot industry popping up in China, the motors, the parts are becoming cheap enough, affordable enough. So we will, on behalf of all the ecosystem, we customize from the supply chain to build an open source arm and evolve with everyone.
Is that also a servo motor?
No, this is brushless.
Okay, brushless, nice.
Yeah, and with all the drivers or the PID controls, we
Right.
will open source everything. We already open source
Yeah.
everything. So I think it's becoming a trusted ground, a reference design for people to build to different sizes, different activations. And we are more like platform to incubate more embodied or physical AI parts from this.
What are some projects that are building upon this that
Yeah.
stood out to you?
It's a very interesting involvement. Previously, with the expensive, like a $20,000 robot arm, we can only do heavy industry,
Yeah.
professional ones. But with cheap enough, like $1,000 robot arm, you can think of a lot of domains, cheap enough to replace human neighbors or a dangerous environment that not suitable before. We call them the, pan industry. It's like a not professional industry, but it's more like for retail, for agriculture, not industry, but it's like for everyday usages.
Yeah, more like commercial use.
Commercial
like
use
in a shop or
in a laboratory.
yeah, in a lab.
It can be very pervasive. It's like personal computer.
Yeah.
In the beginning, we don't think personal computer is not a must. But in the end, the personal computer, people think of all the usages. We benefit from that. I think it's a similar stage for personal robots. But it's not necessary to be a robot that work for you like a humanoid. That's too expensive in the beginning. Maybe you can start with a personal robot arm to help you, give you extra hand on
Yeah.
many things. It can be a pick-up place from a sorting machine. It can be your coffee maker. You could be working as your chef in the restaurants for barbecue. So we see these possibilities, and we're pushing that very much into cooking. Because
Nice.
cooking is everybody talking about.
Yeah.
But cooking is also a very diversity of actuations and sensing.
Yeah.
Different food, different question have their different process. But how can autonomous machine do that? So it's a very interesting challenge.
Yeah,
and we
that's
don't have a
fantastic.
fixed one answer. That's where we like it.
Yeah.
And with all the diversities, you might be making noodles, you might be making barbecue, you might be making sushi. But people can challenge that with different models, different methodologies. But in the end, we hope that people can really use it in the practical situation.
Do you think this will go together at some point?
Yeah, sure. These actually, they go together, but just not on this model. This is a very cheap robot hand with limited actuations of freedom. But if we
How
combine
many DOF?
12-ish?
12? Okay.
Yeah.
And what's the cost for that, like,
I
approximately?
think the cost is $100-ish.
That's really cheap.
Yeah.
Wow. How's that possible? Like,
Because
I mean, each
it's
motor
just
is...
small servers.
I see. Okay.
And they're very easily engineered, very clear, smartly engineered. So I believe these guys are not for venture capitalists, but they are more for small business to start humbly to do something for real.
Yeah, that's great.
It's a different approach.
Yeah. So humanoids, everyone's talking about them. And so in the US, a lot of these humanoid companies are vertically integrated, so platform first as well. And in China, I see a lot of just start small, a narrow use case, and then deploy it and expand. So is that how you see it? And what's the winning strategy?
I think there's no winning and losing between these two kinds because they are different creatures. So they are different. It's like a biosystem. They are in a different position. For the humanoids, want to dominate the world, have all the human egos, I don't know them. I don't know how they are going to win or lose. But they have their methodologies, at least they have enough capital to pursue that possibility. But what we are looking at is, we believe the majority of the robots are not humanoids. They are like your vacuum cleaners. They should be like actual like nav that can correspond to your actions. Even we look at this room, it's like a robot. We are in the belly.
Yep.
It's called smart home. It can be more active, proactive. The AI should be responding to you. It should be agentic. So I think in the future, like most of the devices we have today will be a robot.
Yep.
Even the camera, it should be moving automatically. It should be understanding your like podcast needs and to adjust itself. It's a robot as well.
Yep.
But it does not need to be a humanoid.
Yeah.
So our passion, and I think through the open source and maker culture, is we can enable more startups who wants to build more vertical things that the big company don't care about.
So you reopened the San Jose office earlier this year, and you hosted this embodied AI hackathon around GTC. So tell me more about your thoughts on the US market for seed, and what are you thinking?
We have the US office in Bay Area 10 years ago. We closed down because of COVID, because nobody's doing hardware for a few years. But now AI is back. People are talking about physical AI, people building robots. So we want to build a channel, a portal between Bay Area and the Bay Area. So I think because the economy, the talents are very complementary. The software is very strong. Application, the venture capitalist is very strong in San Francisco area. But in Shenzhen, we have all the engineering solid ground, supply chains. So it's very naturally complementary to each other. But how do we shorten the distance? Not only hosting people flying from San Francisco, but we should go to the Bay Area to really sharing what's already out there to help people to build the hardware easier. So they don't need to raise a lot of big chunk of money to build something. We can go to the front end and one button to get things made. So that's our strategy to do that. And the US is still the biggest market. And we have a lot of friends, relationships, but we need to have a mechanism to fasten their creations.
Yeah, save a lot of flights for your
flights.
customers.
Yeah, exactly.
20 years from now, when someone writes the history of how physical AI is done, and what role do you think Shenzhen would play in that history?
I guess Shenzhen should be the biggest incubator for all the hardwares, but it's not incubating for Shenzhen teams only. It should be incubator for the global teams. So what are we envisioning 20 years from now is not a one giant company in China conquer the world with their products. I don't think that's the most reasonable way. It should be team from all over the world. They come to Shenzhen, maybe work with us, maybe not, to build their stuff for their own, like a business, for their own people. They control all the like data, all the models, all the supply chains. So they should be use Shenzhen as a service. And we from 15 years ago, we keep advocating is innovate with China. It's not made in China or made in the States. It's already like a hybrid, very one piece of the industry.
Yeah, it's a close partnership.
It's close partnership, but we should be more open. And at least the city is doing all the opennesses, and we are just trying to contribute our parts. And for people to choose, I need this or not.
Well, thank you, Eric.
Okay.
This is great.